Question 1 to 4. Which paragraph contains the following information? A comparison between rats learning and human learning. This comparison is given in paragraph D. Paragraph D, fourth line. Further elegant experiments show that naive adults could develop the skill if they were provided with cones from which the first complete spiral of scales had been removed. Rather like our new photocopier, which you can work out how to use once someone has shown you how to switch it on. So this is the comparison between rats learning and human learning. Second, a reference to the earliest study in animal language. Paragraph A contains this information. Learning theory is rooted in the work of Ivan Pavlov, the famous scientist who discovered and documented the principles governing how animals, humans included, learn in 19s. So this is the reference to the earliest study in animal learning, which is in 90s. Third, the discovery of who stripped the pine cone. This information is given in paragraph C. Second line. So the investigation started with no vaguely theoretical intent, but was directed at finding out what was eating the nutritious pine seeds and how they managed to get them out of the cones. The culprit proved to be a versatile and athletic black rat. So this is the discovery of finding who stripped the pine cone. That the main culprit proved to be versatile and athletic black rat who stripped the pine cone. Fourth, a description of a cost effectiveness experiment. This information is given in paragraph E. A good example of adaptive bearing, we might conclude, but let's see the economics. This was determined by measuring oxygen uptake of a rat stripping a cone in a metabolic chamber to calculate energetic cost and comparing it with the benefits of the pine seeds measured by calorimeter. The cost proved to be less than 10% of the energetic value of the cone, an acceptable profit margin. So this is the description of a cost effectiveness experiment in paragraph E. Question 5 to 8. True false not given. Fifth, the field trip to Israel was to investigate how black rats learn to strip pine cones. This statement is false because in paragraph C, second line, information is given that the research reported in one paper started with a school field trip to Israel to a pine forest where many pine cones were discovered, stripped to the central core. So the investigation started with no vaguely theoretical intent, but was directed at finding out what was eating the nutritious pine seeds and how they managed to get them out of the cone. It is clearly given that the investigators started with no vaguely theoretical intent, as they were unaware that black rats were stripping the pine cones, which they found out after the investigation, that the main culprit proved to be a versatile black rat. And the investigation was directed at finding out what was eating the nutritious pine seeds and how they managed to get them out of the cones. Sixth, the pine cones were stripped from bottom to top by black rats. This statement is true because in paragraph C, fourth line, it is clearly given that the culprit proved to be the versatile and athletic black rat, and the technique was to bite each cone scale off at its base in sequence from base to the tip. following the spiral growth pattern of the cone. It is clearly given that the pine cones were stripped from bottom to the top by black rats, so it is true. 7th, it can be learned from other relevant experiences to use a photocopier. It is true. In paragraph D, same information is given that rather like our new photocopier, which you can work out how to use once someone has shown you how to switch it on. The statement agrees with the information available in the passage that it can be learned from other relevant experience to use a photocopier when someone has shown you how to switch it on. 8th, stripping the pine cones is an instinct of black rats. This statement contradicts the information. As in paragraph D, first line, the information is urban rats were found to lack the skill and were unable to learn it even if housed with experienced cone strippers. It is clearly understandable that black rats lacked this skill because it was not instinct of black rats. 9 to 13. Complete the summary below using words from the box. While the nutcracker is more able to catch seeds, the jay relies dash on catching food and is less specialized in this ability, but more dash. In paragraph F, third line, the former is a specialist catching 30,000 or so seeds in scattered location that it will recover over the months of winter. The former is Clark's nutcracker. The Mexican jay will also catch food but much less dependent upon this than nutcracker. So in ninth, answer is less on catching food. As nutcracker is more able to catch seeds, the jay relies less on catching food and is thus less specialized in this ability but more dash. As in the next line, the two species also differ in their social structure, the nutcracker being rather solitary while the jay forages in social groups. And jay is less specialized in this ability but more social. In the experiment, the catcher bird hid seeds in the ground while other dash. In paragraph G, second line, the design is slightly comical, with a catcher bird wandering about a room with lots of holes in the floor, hiding food in some of the holes, while watched by an observer bird perched in a cage, as while the other bird watched. Next, as a result, the nutcracker and the Mexican jay showed different performance in the role of dash at finding the seeds. In next line, 2 days later, catcher and observers were tested for their discovery rate against an estimated random performance. The role of catcher, not only nutcracker but also less specialized jay performed above chance. More surprisingly, however, jay observers were as successful as jay catchers, whereas nutcracker observers did no better than chance. It is given that in the role of catcher, nutcracker and jay performed above chance, but surprisingly, jay observer were as successful as jay catcher, whereas nutcracker observer did no better than chance. That the nutcracker and Mexican jay showed different performance in the role of observer, not catcher. So it is observer. At finding the seed, the observing dash did not do as well as its counterparts, as they were observing nutcracker. So its answer is 13, nutcracker.